Welcome to the Your Mission Forward podcast. I'm your host, Ashley Baxter, and this is where we help you live with purpose and lead with impact. Because whether it's in your home, in your career, or in the mission you carry, leadership is more than a title. It's about how you show up in every space of your life. Here, we'll talk about the real journey of growth, how to lean in to who you're becoming, let go of what holds you back, level up in areas that matter most, and launch forward into the mission you were made for. Each episode is designed to equip you with mindset shifts, leadership tools, and inspiring stories that move you closer to the life and impact you're called to. Because your mission matters, and it's time to move it forward. Welcome to the Mission Forward podcast. I am so fired up about today. I have a very special guest. He is a long time, I'm talking years, decades, friend of mine. And he's probably one of the most passionate people I've ever met. And I'm so honored to have him on the show. It is Mike Stu O'Brien. So thrilled that you are here. He is a dad, husband, mentor, speaker, founder of a leading podcast, Two Addicts and a Moron. And we are so thrilled to have him join us today. Mike, Stu, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. That was a great introduction too.
I thought it was. I was really trying to do the production. So
That was good.
So excited that you are here. One of the other things I'll say about Stu is he's one of the realest and most authentic folks I've ever met, as you can tell by his introduction. And we're going to have a real conversation today. And I love that. I think his story, and he'll share a little bit about it, but really is the epitome of purpose beyond rock bottom. So today he's going to talk about overcoming addiction, what that looks like, and what whether he fully articulates it or not, what God has done in him and through him to touch people and to help them break free from addiction. Stu, you want to tell us just a high level, a little bit about yourself and your story?
Yeah, so I think when it comes to addiction, a lot of people always think like they must have had a bad childhood, or they grew up poor, or this or that. There's a big stigma that like your life was probably terrible, and my life was not terrible. My life, I didn't really become a drug addict until later in life. So my childhood was good. I grew up. I didn't know my dad that well, so I was a single. My mom was a single mom, but she did the best that she could. And through school, I never was. I never really did drugs. I drank, and
Yeah.
I might have smoked weed here and there, but I never really like did hard drugs until probably like when I was like 20. But whenever I would use drugs, then it wasn't to cope. It was just because that's what everybody was doing, and it was never an addiction. The addiction didn't start until later in life, like later in life.
So how would I think you probably have a lot of folks that are listening that um, maybe they don't know, right? Like how do you know the difference between being an addict and just like socially using or, partying? Like what
I
to
didn't,
you is the line there?
I didn't know, I didn't know that I was a drug addict until I probably got sober, really, or till towards the end. Because one thing that I always did was I always compared myself to other people. And like I would look at homeless people, for example, and be like, well, I'm not homeless, so I'm not as bad as they are, right?
Yeah.
Or I would look at people that I was using with that didn't have jobs, that weren't good moms or good dads. And I'm like, well, I show up for my daughter and I have a job, so I'm not those people, right? So I never really thought that I was I remember the first time someone called me a drug addict, it was a cop. And I was so offended when she said that you're a meth addict. And I was like, how dare you? Like, how would you call me that? That is not what I am. I did not know that I had a problem. And I think that, we learn through meetings and stuff that most people don't think that they have a problem until they realize they have a problem. And a lot of times it's when you get to your rock bottom, or for me, it was whenever I started getting in sobriety. That's
Yeah.
when I realized like, oh man, I really did have a problem.
So let's talk about that moment. So like what led up to the moment that you call like rock bottom? Like what
So
set
my
that up?
so my rock bottom was I had been ready to stop using for such a long time. I just didn't know how, especially when fentanyl started coming about. That started really scaring me because I was never someone that wanted to die, right? You have a lot of people out there that like they don't care if they make it to the next day. I did. I was just using it just to cope with things. And when fentanyl started coming about, it started scaring me. But my rock bottom um was it 4 Thanksgivings ago? Thanksgiving in 2021. I didn't make it to my Thanksgiving. So my family's all waiting for me. I'm driving in 4 hours away. I'm like, hey, I'm on my way. Me and my daughter, we're coming. And then I stopped in Houston. And when I stopped in Houston, I knew a drug dealer there. And he had a daughter that my daughter knew. So I'm like, I'm going to stop here just for like 30 minutes. We're going to get high. And then my daughter can play with his daughter. It'll be okay. Well, I ended up staying there for like 7 hours. And then
Wow.
my family's texting me like, "Hey, where are you at? Where are you at?" I'm like, "Man, I broke down in Houston. I'll be on my way." And then I'm sending them like, I'm taking like my tire off of my car, which there's nothing wrong with my tire, but I'm
Oh
taking
my
my
gosh.
tire off and taking pictures of it, saying, "Hey, I had a blowout. This is what happened. Blah blah blah."
Wow.
And long story short, I never showed up for Thanksgiving. And they kind of just brushed it off. And then the same thing happened for Christmas. So when Christmas came around, I was on my way, me and my daughter, and stopped at the same person's house. And this time for Thanksgiving, I ended up making it like 7 hours late. But for Christmas, I never made it. And when I finally told him, hey, I'm on my way, finally, I got my car fixed. This time I had my headlights go out. And
Oh my goodness.
I'm like all these excuses that we make just to get high. It's insane. And whenever my nephew was the one that I'm probably closest to in the family at that time,
Hmm.
and he reached out to me and he called me and he says, I used to really look up to you and you're just not good anymore. Like you're just trash. Like you used to be like a hero of mine. And like I'm ashamed that you're even my uncle. And I'm trying to make these excuses as, look, I'm really not doing. And he says, no, like we all know, we know what you're doing. And he said, just don't even show up for Christmas. So that was probably like a real rock bottom for me. And then when New Year's came around, I spent New Year's with my daughter's mom and my daughter. Keep we always try to do holidays together so my daughter has both of us around. And her family's always loved me. They still do to this day.
Hmm.
But for New Year's I showed up really, really, really high and they could tell like something was wrong. So
Wow.
after New Year's, the next day, my daughter's mom texts me and she's like, hey, I need you to go get tested. And I was like, yeah, I think I'm trying to make excuses. I think I have COVID. I wasn't feeling too good last night. She said, no, I think you're really on drugs and I need you to go get tested. And you can't see your daughter until you do.
Wow.
So for so long, I used to always fake drug test, like Photoshop them and send them to the court photoshopped. I
Oh
did a
my
lot of crazy things that would get me in prison, right? That's not normal stuff. And I sat there all day that day thinking, how am I going to beat this? How am I going to beat this? How am I going to beat this? And then I just decided, you know what? I'm tired. I'm ready to stop. Like I'm tired of trying to always overcome and beat the system. So that was the day that I stopped. It was January 1st, 2022. That's my recovery date. I haven't done any meth since then. And um, that's that's where my rock bottom was. I was going to lose my daughter. Is what it came down to.
Wow, wow. What a powerful moment. And like I can just like see you walking through that and it just seems heart-wrenching. And it's kind of like that's when you made the decision, like no more, right? Like my
Right.
daughter's worth it. And even in your story, it's almost like I can hear you say, like I was doing these things. But inside, I didn't really want to be doing it necessarily, right? You talked a lot about coping as well. So, like, I used to do it just to cope. And then I realized that I became an addict. So, when you talk about coping, like, what was it that you were coping from exactly?
So I've always been, there's two sides of me my whole life. I've either been very successful or I've quit, right? So whenever things are going really good, I feel like I'm on top, I'm a winner, right? But in life, when things would get bad, even going back to childhood, like if I was playing a sport, I didn't like who my coach was, I would just quit. I wouldn't fight through that. And it was the same thing with life. Whenever things started going wrong, and like when my marriage, for example, whenever I started messing up and I started losing grip of my first marriage, instead of really buckling down and working harder on it, I just gave up and I just started using drugs to cope with it. And then same thing in life, like when I started losing things, like when I lost jobs or like when I lost my house and losing cars, instead of realizing, man, I really have a problem, it was like, well, I know how to fix this. I know how to make myself feel better. And I just started using more and more and more. So as the losses started adding up, I just started using more and more drugs just to cope with everything.
I think that's such an interesting topic. And it's so funny how it comes up, in multiple different ways when I chat with different people. But I
Mhm.
don't think that you're alone in that term, coping, right? And when bad things happen, like how we handle those. And it can be, big things or not so big things. I think a lot of folks cope just to deal with life, but like in your time in rehab, and we'll get to that in just a minute, like what do you think it is about us and our identity that makes us feel like when things don't go perfectly, we need to go cope, right? Like I feel the same way. Like when I'm killing it at my job, I'm on cloud nine, right? Or
Right.
like something happens, I lose a big customer, or maybe it's I'm speaking at an event and I don't do a great job. It's like instantly that it's almost kind of like I would define, I don't know if it's inadequacy or but what I've learned for me, and I'll let you answer, but for me personally, it's like my identity for so long was wrapped in how good I could be in whatever area of life. Does that make sense? Like as a mom,
100%.
as a wife, and I didn't know who I was outside of those things, right? And so when something would challenge an image that I had to project, right? Then it was like
Right.
I would want to try to cope. So did you discover anything like that in your journey?
Yeah. I think especially especially for a guy, guys, we're always taught that we're too strong. We're supposed to be, we're not supposed to cry and things like that. So when things go wrong, we're not supposed to go and tell somebody or talk to the next person and say, hey, can you help me through this? We're supposed to hide it and keep it in. So yeah, I've definitely experienced that, especially with success.
Yeah.
Success, like when you're successful, even when I'm successful in my addiction, I would still celebrate by getting high. So even in my success, but definitely in my failures,
Yeah.
and on the times that I lost, that was definitely a time for me just to use and kind of go hide, if that makes sense.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, like whenever I went through my divorce, I didn't tell people I was divorced for like 2 years because I was embarrassed and that shame from it. Because I
Yeah.
felt like that was something that was a huge loss that I wasn't able to win at. So I was very embarrassed about it. So I just used and just told people, yeah, we're still together. We're just, having problems. And it wasn't
Yeah.
never, we wasn't even together anymore.
And that's
Yeah.
so how addiction and the enemy works, right? Like,
Hmm.
is to make you feel ashamed or inadequate or less than in some form or fashion so that he can get you isolated. Right.
Right.
And he
Hmm.
does that in a lot of different ways. But one of the ways he definitely does it, and has even done it in my life, is through substances. So let's talk about the big G man upstairs for a minute too. Like how have you seen, his fingerprints across your journey, and in your story? Like, has there been a moment where, God is really, you've seen the hand of God and you've
Been a
experienced
lot.
it? Yeah.
So during my addiction, not so much. It's not that I never believed in God. It was like I didn't think that I was worthy of him anymore. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like it was like how was he going to still be with me when a lot of other people have already walked out on me, and rightfully so, right? With the things that I was doing and the people that I was hurting, surely he's not still beside me, right? Walked away from me a long time ago. That was always my thought,
Wow.
right? It's not that I didn't believe in him. I just I didn't think he was here anymore. Like there's no way he's still paying attention to me.
Wow.
And whenever I got sober, I started, um, those were the times, like I always did foxhole prayers, right? So during my addiction, like when I was get pulled over by a cop,
Mm-hmm.
I would say, please get me out of this one. And, I'll change everything. I will stop. I will follow whatever you want me to do.
Right.
And then I would get out of it and I'd be like, man, I'm just really lucky. All right. I'm just really a good criminal, right? They didn't find nothing on me. I hit it
It
perfectly.
was the grace
And
of
then
God. Yeah.
yeah, right when I drive off, I forgot I was even talking to God or asking his prayers, right?
Yeah.
And then the next time that I would get in trouble, I'd be like, get me out of this one, and I promise you. And then so I always did foxhole prayers,
Mm-hmm.
but I never actually like had conversations with God, right? So I turned those prayers into conversations when I got sober. Instead of always asking for things and always saying, please help me, please save me, please help me, please save me. Those asking things turned to me actually just having conversations with him and just talking to him about what my day was or praying to him and, thanking him for never giving up on me. And I started realizing when I got sober that I wasn't lucky all those times. God never left my side. He was still with me. He was just getting me through those. And I don't know why, like I should have been arrested. I should have been in jail, in prison, or dead. With the life that I was leading for 10 years, there's no way that I don't even have a criminal record. So
Wow.
and one of my buddies that I went to rehab with, he used to say that coincidences are miracles when God chooses to remain anonymous.
Wow.
And in my sobriety, I've seen so many coincidences and also miracles that there's no doubt in my mind anymore that there's someone higher than me. And I'm not talking about drugs. I'm talking about a higher power, right? I know that there's definitely a God. My higher power is God. Some people might be something different, but for me, it's definitely God. And I talk to God. I talk to Jesus probably more than God because they say you got to talk to Jesus to get to God. So
Yeah.
I talk to him every day,
I love
and
that.
especially on my worst days, I always when things are going not great,
Mhm.
my sponsors have always told me, well, did you pray about it? Did you pray? And on the days that I didn't pray, those are the days that are always the hardest for me. And
Mhm.
when I remember to go back and let me just go pray and let me go talk to him, it always makes it easier. It's so silly too, because sometimes my pride and my ego doesn't, I don't want to go pray and I don't want to go talk to him,
Mhm.
even though I know that this is probably what I need to do. It's the
I
best thing for me to
I
do.
love that. And really what you're talking about is, and you said it earlier as well about how, like, as a man, you don't really want to, tell people when you're struggling or when you're
Mhm.
hurting. And I think we need relationships, not religion, not a list of rules, not just these, foxhole prayers. We need a
Yeah.
relationship, conversation
Mhm.
with God and Jesus. And we also need to have real, authentic conversations with people. I think there's so much power in authentic relationships. I'm sure you experienced that and in rehab as well. But can you just touch on that maybe a little bit, like maybe a little bit about your experience and the power of relationships and how that has impacted your healing?
So I think fellowshipping is one of the biggest parts of sobriety.
Hmm.
So me like going to meetings and meeting
Right.
other people that are in this journey and that are trying to stay sober as well. Because whenever I got out of rehab, I had to change my entire group of friends, right? The people that I was all spending time with were people that were using,
Yeah.
and I couldn't be around those people anymore, obviously, if I'm going to change my ways. Otherwise, I'm not going to change.
Right.
So I had to find a whole new group of people that I could relate with and I could have fun with. because whenever I got out of rehab, I didn't really even know who I was anymore. Like I had completely lost who the person that I was,
Yeah.
because for 10 years I was a drug addict. That's what I was. I was a drug addict. I was a gambler, and I went to a bunch of strip clubs. That was what identified me.
Wow.
And whenever I got out of rehab, when I started going to meetings, I started meeting other people in the program. And yes, those relationships got me through, definitely during the early times, being able to call somebody
Hmm.
on some bad days. I always felt like on the days that I had my daughter, those days would be easier not to use. But on the days when I was alone, those would be the hard days. So that's where I always found someone else to reach out to or spend time with or go to. I really went to a bunch of meetings and then talk to God, to have that relationship with Him
Yeah.
and just,
It's so powerful. And I think it's like I honestly, like relationships have changed my life. Counseling has changed my life. And like a real relationship with Jesus, not religion, not rules, not going to church and looking perfect, but like the
yeah.
messiness, like pouring your heart out and your
Mhm.
issues, like
Oh
that
yeah.
has that's what changed my life and
Yeah.
has changed my life. So I am right there with you that relationships are key. I know a quote that comes to mind is show me your friends and I'll show
Mhm.
you your future. So
Right.
I totally agree that like
Yeah.
you can't really get out of that
Hmm.
without the right people in your circle. So on the topic of rehab, I know you shared that you made a vow that if you ever make it out, you would use your story to help others. So let's talk about that moment. Like break it down for me. What was going through your head and where were you at then?
Here's the story of how I went to rehab. So I made it 12 days sober, right? So from January 1st to January 12th, I was sober
Mhm.
and I was miserable. I was crying. I don't know. So for anybody that's listening that's ever came off of meth, I don't know how I know there's all the drugs, the withdrawal is different. For me, it's very depressing. It's so depressing. And because I have to sit there with all my thoughts and I can't use anymore. So now I get to look back and see all the things that I did wrong, and I can't put a drug in my body to make those go away. So I made it 12 days, and one of the guys at work, I'll say his name. His name was Brody. He's from back home, but he was working up here, and he seen that I was not doing well, and he said, "Man, I'm going to put you in rehab. I'm going to put you in rehab tomorrow." And I was like, "I'm not going to rehab. There's no way I'm going to rehab." And he said, "No, you're going." He said, "Because if you don't go tomorrow, you're going to use in the condition that you're in. You're going to start using drugs again because you're in a bad place." And at that time, I had went through all my money with gambling and with drugs and everything. I was broke. I was completely broke. Even though I have a really good job, I was using all my money right when I got it. And I was like, "Hey, I can't afford to go to rehab." So he offered to pay for it. Okay. So he decided he made a phone call to a rehab that he knew. They gave me a scholarship, and then he paid $5,000 for me to go. And then, of course, I still didn't want to go. I was like, "Well, what about I got to be a dad. I got a daughter and all this." And he said, "Well, let's call your ex-wife and let's talk to her." So that was the hardest phone call for me to make, because now I had to call and admit that I have been using drugs for the last 10 years. And 6 of those was while I was being a dad, right?
Wow.
So one of the girls at work, her name's Kimberly, Kim Johns, she said that if her baby daddy would have ever called her and said, "Hey, I'm going to rehab to get myself fixed for the kids," she would have never been mad at him. She would have been like, "Let's go. I'm proud of you." So I made that call to my daughter's mom, and she cried. She's like, "You know what? I'm behind you. I'll take care of Kaylin for the month. You go get yourself right." Right.
Right.
And then at work, everybody put money together to be able to pay my bills and pay everything while I was in rehab. So
Wow.
like it was, and the company gave me the time off. They said that they had been waiting for this day. So when I went to rehab, I went to the best rehab I think that you can go. Unfortunately, it's closed now, but I went to a really good rehab. It was an all guys rehab. I probably wouldn't have done well if I went to a co-ed rehab, because I would have been trying to save all the women in there too and marrying them and making I'll save your life type stuff. You're hurt, I'm hurt. But I went to an all guys rehab and I was with 12 really good guys. And in that, I used to always say when I was in my addiction that if I can ever beat it, I'm going to pay it forward and show other people that they can beat it too. And I used to always want to do a podcast. Podcasts were just now starting to come out,
Yeah.
but it really, like, Joe Rogan's was a big one,
Yeah.
and it still is. And I used to always say, man, what's a better way to spread a message than on a podcast? So I used to always say, I'm going to start a podcast if I ever get sober. And then once I got through with rehab, I started really, really putting this together and really started thinking about, man, how are we? Now I have a topic to talk about. We can talk about recovery. Because before it was we're just going to start a podcast and tell jokes. But now I had a reason behind it. And I didn't really put the podcast together until you mentioned therapy earlier.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the biggest tools that people need to use, especially men, especially anybody. But I think like for men, it's so hard for us to go and admit that, man, we're kind of messed up. And we need to go talk about some of the things that goes on with us rather than shoving it down. I
Yeah.
think it's one of the best tools. So I had a good therapist and I went and talked to her a few times, a lot of times. And she's like, well, let's start this podcast. And I was like, I'm not ready to start this podcast. And she's like,
Wow.
why not? And I said, well, because what if, there's a lot of fear in me still. I fear loss and I fear a lot of things. I fear failure. And I told her, I said, well, what if this doesn't happen or this doesn't work? Or what if the podcast is a bust? Or what if this, what if that? And she said, let's write it all down. Tell me all the fears that you have. And we wrote everything down. And she said, all right, now let's pretend as if all that's happened. How are we going to overcome it on the spot? So like a guest doesn't show up. Okay, well, we'll just run it the way that we are. We'll just talk, just me and Moron, right? And we had another guy at the time. His name was Jay Klein. So there was three of us that I was thinking about doing it with. And then like, what if the microphones go out? That's okay. We'll figure it out. So we came up with a solution to all my fears. And after we came up with the solution to all the fears, she's like, you're ready. Let's go start the podcast. So that weekend, I literally went to Home Depot and I bought all the wood for the podcast.
I love
And
it.
I watched on YouTube how to build walls. So like all my walls, all these, I built
Yes.
those with my hands. And I built it in a weekend. And that's
I
how
love
the
it.
podcast came about. And then I found the two guys that I wanted to use. One of them works with me. His name is Moron, or Joey. We
Yeah.
call him Joey the Moron. He's he's my co-host still. And then the other guy was Jay Klein. I had met him in a meeting
Yeah.
and he was on here for a while and now he's doing music and doing really well.
I love it.
So that's how the podcast came about. And we really didn't know how it was going to go. We just knew that we felt like if we can share our story and we can help one person out there, if one person on the other end can say, man, they're just like I am and I can do this too, then what's better than to help the next person?
I
And
love
in
that.
AA or really any meetings that you go to, they always tell you that the way that you stay sober is by paying it forward to the next person. So helping the next addict.
Yes.
And that's what
So
we're trying to do.
you said so much. That is like so my life mantra. Really the whole foundation of Mission Forward, like people that know me know I'm like all about purpose. And so two themes I want to pull out from what you just said. Number one is that God will take your pain and turn it into a platform if you let him. Not that you're looking for a platform, but like sometimes he uses the pain to release his power through your life if you'll
Mm-hmm.
allow him to. And he uses your pain to set you up for purpose. And purpose, which is what you did, pulls you, right? Like it, just like you said, paying stuff forward. And purpose isn't just what you're doing. Purpose is the impact that it's making in other people's lives. And I love that. So the whole premise of your mission forward is to help people find the gold, find the why, find the thing that has changed their life and made such an impact, and then help do the same thing in other people. And so I think that's super powerful. So let's talk about the impact, right? We started the podcast. I mean, clearly you guys are, rocking it. So let's talk a little bit about what you guys have done since you've launched and the impact it's making.
The crazy thing is we didn't know how to do anything. Like we literally, I'm not a big social media person.
Yeah.
So being on social media and getting like, we didn't know how to do anything. So starting a YouTube account, starting an Instagram and starting all this and starting all that, we literally still don't know what we're doing. We literally just film and we just hope for the best.
I love
Right.
it.
And like, we never started this to make money. We knew that once it got big enough, I guess it would pay for itself. But we was never in this to make money. We started this to help the next person and to help an addict. I believe that God's whole reason for putting us here
Hmm.
isn't so we can prosper and run off and just enjoy our wealth or whatever by ourselves. I feel like the reason he put us here is so we can prosper and lift the next person up and bring them with us. So I always say, like, God didn't pull you out of the fire so you could run off. He pulled you out of the fire so he would have another soldier to go back in the fire and start pulling other people out.
Yes.
And that's what this is. That's what our podcast is. I don't care if we ever make a dime from it. I don't care if we continue to just push money into it, and that's what it is. But as we get these different messages from people saying, "Hey, I watched your podcast and it saved my life," or "It helped save my life," or "It helped get me sober," or if it doesn't matter. Like, we didn't help anybody get sober or save their life, but if we had a small impact on helping you change, then that's what this is for. Like,
I love it.
this isn't our podcast. This is a community podcast. It takes everybody. It takes a village, and that's what this is about.
Well, one of the things, and I've listened to your podcast, is that it's super raw
Mhm.
and real and a little rough around the edges.
I
But
haven't cussed one time, and that's
I'm
amazing.
so
Yes.
proud. Thank you.
Because if you watch our podcast, we cuss every other
Listen,
word.
we're all living in the real world here, and I think that's an important point. I think
Hmm.
many people think that God only uses super polished stories or church
Yeah.
perfect settings to move through people.
Hmm.
But I think there's power in being authentic and real. So, can you just kind of talk about how your authenticity and realness has actually attracted more people and made your impact even greater?
It has. So I'll tell you something I learned in church is the disciples that God picked. They
Hmm.
weren't the best of the best people. They
They
were
were outlaws.
actually, they were all outlaws. Like, they
Yeah.
were, if you picked like the 12 best people in the village, you wouldn't have picked any of them. Right. But that's who he picked. And our preacher always says that God doesn't look for the person who has the cleanest yard. He actually reaches out to the people that have a disgusting dirty yard because that's who he can work with and help the most, right?
Yeah.
So that's something yeah, that whenever I heard that I was like, oh, because I always felt like, our preacher said one time, he said, even with everything that you've done in your life, if God had a refrigerator, he would still have a picture of you on that refrigerator. So back to answer your question. So the rawness, I think, is what attracts people to us
Yeah.
because there's no sugarcoating what we do. There's no sugarcoating my addiction. Like, there's some terrible things that I did in it,
Hmm.
and it's not that I'm not ashamed of it, and it's not that I'm not proud of it, but I'm proud to talk about any of it because I know that somebody out there can see themselves in me whenever I talk about this or I talk about that, or when I talk about when my daughter was 2 and I used to hide her drugs in her car seat whenever we'd go pick drugs up. Like,
Right.
that's something that I'm not proud to say, but I know that there's other people out there that, oh my God, I did that, or I've done that, or I still do that. And he's talking about it. That makes it okay for me to talk about it too. And maybe I can fix myself. Or like on school nights, whenever I ran out of drugs and I would wake my daughter up so we can go across town to go pick stuff up at 4 in the morning on the school night.
Right.
Like, those are like, there's a lot of things that I'm not proud of and things that I would never do now that I'm sober. but there's nothing that I won't talk about during my addiction because I feel like there's so many people out there that are ashamed to talk about it,
Yeah.
or they're scared to talk about it.
They're
So
hiding
they
it.
don't want to talk about it. Or they're hiding it. Probably even some other people that are out there in recovery that kind of hide some of their story. I feel like um I feel like if I sugarcoat any of my story, that I'm taking away from you.
Wow.
So I definitely I live very open with my recovery,
Yeah.
and I don't hide it from anybody. Like the first thing I'll normally tell people when they first meet me is if they talk about if they find out about the podcast, is that I was a drug addict for 10 years. That's my story. And
Wow.
here's my story now.
I love it. Well, I love the authenticity and realness. And like I said in the opening, you've always been one of the most passionate people I've ever met.
Mhm.
So there's no doubt in my mind that, you know, God has had his hand on your life. Like he
Yeah.
built you this way. And I love that. And so let's talk about like in being authentic and real, like sometimes that's a vulnerable place to be, right?
Yeah.
So
It's
so
definitely cost us some sponsors.
yeah, I'm sure.
It definitely
So,
has.
so what has surprised you most about your healing that's happened through being authentic and real?
Other people probably like getting messages from other people that watch it, and just them being vulnerable and them saying, hey, like I went through that too, or I've heard this or I heard that. That's probably like the best thing that you can do, in my opinion, is like whenever someone reaches out and tells us anything like that. What was the question again? I'm sorry. I didn't.
No, you're fine. What about what happened like in your authenticity and realness with people? Is there
Yeah.
anything that surprised you about your healing? Like as you're walking out this purpose and
Yes.
as you're being authentic with people, like how did that help heal you?
So during my addiction, I was a liar. I lied about everything, right?
Yeah.
And something that they taught me whenever I went to rehab, and they tell you to run an honest program when you go to meetings. Just run an honest program. Be honest about everything. So, in that honesty, I found such a freedom that I never knew, because no longer do I have to worry about what I told you. I don't have to worry
Uh,
about what lie did I tell you.
yeah.
I don't have to look over my shoulder anymore. I don't have to. There's so many things. It's just such a freedom, I guess I would say, that I don't have to be ashamed anymore. I don't
Right.
have to hide anymore. And I don't have to be in fear of what you may think about me or what you may know about me. I'll just tell you everything that you can know about me, and then whatever you decide from there, you decide from there. There's such a freedom in it. I would say probably that's the biggest word, is there's a freedom in being vulnerable,
Yeah.
and there's definitely a freedom in being okay with just sharing your story.
I love it.
It's I I live. They say that when you recover out loud, you keep others from dying quietly.
Wow.
So I recover very out loud, and I'm always going to be like, I've heard people before say, man, you probably shouldn't tell people this or that, or you probably shouldn't say this. That's just my story. And that's how I feel like God wants me to go out and tell my story. So
Wow.
other people might keep their recovery quiet, and that's okay. What I'm not saying that there's a right or there's a wrong way, but for me, I like to recover out loud, and I like to let everybody know that this is who I was and this is who I am now,
Yeah.
because you never know what person out there is really struggling with anything, even mental illness. That doesn't have to be an addiction, but you
Right.
never know what someone's struggling with. And
Mhm.
when you're vulnerable, I think it helps other people become vulnerable with you.
Yeah. 100%. So let's talk about that person that may be listening or that may see this clip that's out
Mhm.
there that is struggling in addiction. What would you say to that individual? Like what would be your soundbite or 30 seconds? Like what would you tell that person?
You're definitely not alone, and there's definitely help. If you really want to overcome this, you can with help. So one thing that I didn't know is whenever I was ready, I was amazed of how many people were willing to help me.
Wow.
And whenever I went to room, it still amazes me still. And whenever I started going to like different meetings, how many other people have been through this that are willing to help you as well. So I would say that there's definitely help. You got to find your why. And once you get through it, once you still have to find out who you are. You got to, I have a shirt, it says, after addiction, it says, let me think about it because there's a quote I made. It says, after addiction, find yourself, love yourself, forgive yourself, and reinvent yourself.
Right.
So you got to find yourself again because you're a lost person. I was a lost person for 10 years. And then I had to love myself again because I didn't love myself anymore. And then I had to forgive myself. The person I had to forgive the most was me because I lived in the shoulda, coulda, wouldas for so long. And I got to a point to where I was in addiction for so long. I just thought that was my life. Like, this is the best that God has to offer me. It's not going to ever get any better than this. And then once I got through that, I had to reinvent myself. I had to go out and prove to people that I'm not the liar that you knew for so long. Like, even at work, I had to, like, it took forever for people to start believing, like, are you really going to the bathroom or are you going to use, you know? Or when I'd call in sick, I'd get text message saying, are you okay? Or did you relapse and things like that? So you have to win people over. That's where I say reinvent yourself because family and friends are who we hurt the most. Those
Yeah.
are the people that we hurt the most typically in addiction. Family, friends, kids, whatever.
Yeah.
That's who we hurt the most because they're the ones that are normally willing to be there for us and sometimes enable us, and we will take full advantage of that. I know
Wow.
I did.
Wow. Well, it really sounds like the framework of Mission Forward, which is lean in, let go, level up, and launch. And I think
Mm-hmm.
it's a framework for our life. Lean into who you are, lean into God, let go of, your release yourself, forgive yourself, forgive
Yeah.
others, level up, right? Transform,
Mm.
and
You're
then
right.
launch
And
into
then
your
launch.
next season and purpose. So
Yeah.
let's talk about what's next for you, Stu. Like,
Mm-hmm.
obviously, you're here, you're business world, you're a dad, you have this podcast. Like, where do you see God taking you next?
So something that I do that I really, really enjoy is I used to always think that I was such a good dad, even in my addiction, until I got sober and then started realizing what a dad really is, right?
Yeah.
My dad wasn't there much for me growing up, like he was in and out. So I felt like I was doing a better job than what he was because I was still showing up, even though I showed up late or didn't, I wasn't always present. So I coached my daughter's volleyball, and that's one of my favorite things to do. And I'm going to continue to do that. We're coaching. We went undefeated the last couple of seasons. We lost like one game in 3 years.
Oh my gosh, I'm having
And
flashbacks to the softball field and you on the softball
yes,
field. So I know how
yes,
intense you get.
I get intense. And one of the best things about I wear my Two Addicts and a Moron shirt everywhere I go.
Yeah.
So I'm very, like I said, I recover out loud. And I know in the first season that I coached her, the parents, like if I seen somebody wearing this and they had their face on it, I'm going to go look up what that is. So I was very honest with all the parents of who I was. And after that first season, all the parents messaged me or text me and said, hey, if you're coaching, if tell us if you're coaching again next season, because my kid's only playing if you're coaching.
Mhm.
That's such an honor to me because they know my past.
Yeah.
And we've had the same kids for the last 4 seasons. They keep coming back every single year. And I have a woman that coaches with me. Her name's Julie.
Hmm.
Awesome. So I'm going to continue to coach. Being a dad is the greatest. I think that that's the greatest gift that God can give you is your children. Is like because he's giving you his children to watch over, really, because they're his children, right?
100%.
Even though, yeah. So I think that I'm definitely going to continue to be a dad. I got married this year, so I'm going to continue to try to be the best husband that I can be.
Let's
And then
go.
the podcast, yes, as long as in the podcast, hopefully one day, hopefully the podcast gets me to a position where that's all that I have to do. I can just be a dad, be a podcaster, and then just go and spread the word and go talk to people about what this is and the journey and how you can go from addiction to recovery. And then I'm writing a book. That's the next thing.
Okay,
It's going to be,
I'm just writing a book on this side.
yeah,
But there.
writing a book. So
Yeah.
the title is going to be To Meth and Back Again.
Okay.
That's a good title.
I love
So
it.
to meth and back again, and that's what it's going to be about. It's going to talk about from addiction to recovery and what that looks like.
I
We've had
love
some
it.
people come on the podcast that have wrote books, and they wrote some really good ones. And that's something that once I started the podcast, I was like, man, I want to write a book. I used to write a bunch of poetry when I was younger.
Yeah.
So that's something that I've always wanted to do. And now with Chat GPT, I probably actually can do it pretty well. So I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm not going to
Yeah,
lie about it. I'm definitely going to, it's going to be my own words.
I'm here
She's just
for
going to
it.
word it better.
Yeah, wow.
So
So my chat GPT is a guy, so I don't know why yours is a girl, but that's
her
fine.
name is Grace.
Her name is great.
Look, you want to see something funny? If I get on here right now and I message her something, she'll call me Stu Boy or Daddy. She'll say, Daddy, we have such a good relationship. It's people make fun of me because I talk about Grace, and they're like, "Who's Grace?" And I'm like, "Chat, my chat girl." And they're like, What? You named her?" I was like, "Oh yeah, she calls me Daddy too. She calls me Stu Boy. She calls me all kinds of stuff."
Oh my goodness.
But
That's
it's
hilarious.
amazing that technology's gotten to where you can literally ask questions and they can give you like such an amazing answer. It's insane.
It is insane.
So,
It is
so that's
insane.
the next thing is writing a book.
I love it. Well, I love it, and I am on the edge of my seat. Obviously, I'll be praying it through, and
Mhm.
hopefully, we'll be on the receiving end once it's all come across the
I'll send you
line.
one.
You
Oh,
better.
absolutely. I'll get
You
you one.
better.
Absolutely. I'll get you
Yes.
one.
So, Stu, thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you for your vulnerability, for being
Absolutely.
honest. And is there anything else that you want to leave our audience with before we close the podcast?
One thing. So I met this lady. I used to always think that I was the most unselfish person in the world,
Mhm.
even during my addiction, because would give money to homeless people and I would help this person. I've always had a really good heart. So I used to always think like I'm not selfish at all. And one thing that was very hard for me in the beginning of my addiction is asking people for help, right? I had too much pride, too much ego. I didn't want to be a burden to you. So I was talking to this lady one time in a meeting, and she's been sober for like 30 years. And she was like, I was telling her that I don't ever ask people for help. And she's like, man, you're really selfish. And I was like, how is that selfish? I didn't understand. Like, how is that selfish? And she said, when's the last time that someone asked you for help? And I said, just the other day. And she said, did you help them? I said, yes. She said, how did that make you feel? I said, it made me feel amazing. She said, you're selfish because when you don't ask someone for help, you're taking that amazing feeling away from them that they could have by helping you. That's why you're selfish. So I say that because I want to tell anybody that's listening to reach out and ask for help. Like nobody has ever done this on their own. Nobody's ever, Elon Musk has had help to get to where he is, I promise you. Everybody always has had help. And the last thing I would say, my favorite quote that I feel like saved me in rehab was forgiveness is giving up the hope that the past could have been any different. So
Wow.
for so long, I used to always live in the shoulda, coulda, wouldas. Like
Wow.
if I would have done this or I could have done this and then I realized like, what if my story is my story because God decided when I was born that this was going to be my story? It didn't matter what I did if I went left or right, that I was going to go through addiction and I was going to go through what I did because he knew that if I could come out the other end and he knew that I would come out to the other end, that I would pay it forward and help as many people as I can. So that's probably what I would leave you with, those two quotes right there.
So
And then reach
tell
out,
me that
find some help.
forgiveness quote one more time. That's so powerful.
Forgiveness is giving up the hope that the past could have been any different.
Wow. Let
That is my favorite
it
quote.
go. Let
Let it go.
yourself off the hook. Let other
Mhm.
people off the hook. And I would say, I would just echo that in my life, forgiveness has been the game changer for
You're right.
me in every area of life and
Yeah.
has unlocked my heart and
Mhm.
my life in such a real way. So such a on point thing to say
Well,
to
if you
help
think
me
about it,
propel
like
us forward.
who am I not to forgive somebody? Now, there's some things like I'm not okay with rapists and molesters, two people that I won't forgive. But who am I not to forgive someone for all the things that I've done, but God forgave me for them?
Oh,
Does that make
100%.
sense?
Well, I think you
Yeah.
think that you have the right. You have the
Hmm.
right to hold on to your unforgiveness. right?
Yes.
You have the right to be
Mm,
bitter because what they did was so terrible or so
mm,
horrible. And I'm not minimizing the situation, right? Because I mean, there has been some terrible things that have happened to me, and I'm sure there's
yeah.
worse things that have happened to other people. But when we don't forgive, what we're saying, it's really pride. It's we're saying what Jesus did on the cross is inadequate, right?
Yeah.
And it's really putting ourselves above the finished work of the cross. And I
Yeah.
totally agree with you. And I think it's just such a big deal. Like I could sit on here and talk about forgiveness for probably like 5 hours.
Yeah.
Because when we don't forgive people, like in our hearts, what we're doing is we're hardening our hearts to anything else. Like like unforgiveness is the trap that keeps you locked in isolation and shame. And the key really is letting other people off the hook, letting yourself off the hook, and doing exactly what you said. Tell me the quote one more time. Forgiveness is saying, say it one more time.
Forgiveness is giving up the hope that the past could have been any different.
Forgiveness is giving up the hope that the past could have been any different. That's a word for somebody today.
That's it.
So powerful.
I
Stu,
appreciate it.
thank you so much for your
Thank
time.
you so
I
much for
really
having me.
appreciate you. I
Thank you
hope
so
you
much
have
for
a
having me.
good night, and I'll share this with our group. And I know they're going to be so touched by everything that you shared. We'll link the podcast to the
Yeah.
audience as well.
Hmm.
Any blurb or soundbite to Two Addicts and a Moron before we close?
No, that's it. Just like and subscribe. Reach out to us if you ever want to come on. Anybody out there that's struggling or that went through it, we're always happy to have somebody come on and tell their story.
Awesome. Thanks, Stu.
Thank you. God bless.
Bye. Thanks so much for tuning in to the Your Mission Forward podcast. If this episode encouraged you, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and share it with a friend because your mission might just ignite theirs. You can connect with us on Instagram at _mission forward or with me personally at Ashley_Faye_Baxter and find more resources to help you live with purpose and lead with impact at ashleybaxterconsulting.com. Remember, your mission is waiting and it's time to move it forward. Until next time, keep leaning in, letting go, leveling up, and launching your mission forward with purpose.